Hello, everybody. How is everybody doing? I am the loud little ducky. We are going to go over Nicholas Guarino's testimony. He was called by the Commonwealth 3 times in the Karen Reed retrial. I don't think that, based on what Hank Brennan said, I do not think he's going to be called back um, as a witness again. And he is a trooper with Massachusetts State Police for the Norfolk County office. He was witness number 4, number 9, and number 20. Hank Brennan did his direct. The defense never crossed Guarino in this retrial this far. Now, I don't think they've really needed to. He hasn't really said anything this time around that really needs to be questioned or pushed. Uh, he made it clear. He cleared up a few points from last year. The defense also had the ruling that they were not allowed to get into the Sandra Birchmore case because Guarino is the one who actually did the phone work um, in the Birchmore case and missed like 30,000 plus texts. And so they're like, okay, you missed this many in this case. Are you sure you didn't miss anything here in regards to, the data that you extracted? But there really wasn't anything, there hasn't really been anything that I would think that the defense needs to hammer on or point out. He's basically been a foundation witness where he just comes in and does things. And it's just stuff that can be entered in and will be entered in as evidence, period. So the first time he takes the stand is on day 4. Um, and he says that he's been with the Massachusetts State Police for 10 years. He's been with the Norfolk County DA's office for about 5 to 6 years. And then in total, he's been in law enforcement about 20 years. He um, did cell phone extractions from Gray Key, which also gives a digital hash value, which is like a digital fingerprint that matches up. And if they don't match up and there's a different hash value, it means that there were manipulations and changes to the data. The Gray Key report, you can open and view the report in like a program called Celebrite or Axiom. And data extraction is his primary role, or was his primary role right now. And this can provide raw data um, or a PDF format. Guarino was in charge of extracting John's phone and Karen Reed's phone. Um, Buchanan and Proctor collected both of their phones. They were both collected on January 31st, 2022. With John's, they ended up getting the password. With Karen's, they did not get into her phone until July of 2022. They had to use a password guesser because why should Karen hand over her phone passcode? You are trying to convict her or pin a crime on her, or you are alleging she did something, or you think she did something. Why would she try to help you convict her? Like, if you don't have to hand over your passcode, don't hand over your passcode. Make them guess it. Who cares how long it takes? They either get into it or they don't. by a certain time period. Um, they did a partial and a full download. The hash values are not the same on that, because the information is not the same. And then on Carrie Roberts' phone and Jennifer McCabe's phone, Connor Keefe is the one who did the extractions on their phone, which is a clarification from last trial because I don't think we heard about that. Um, and if we did, I'm not really sure that I remember that Guarino didn't actually extract Jennifer McCabe's cell phone. So I think it's clear, especially when they know that on Guarino, they want to bring up that in the Sandra Birchmore case, you missed all this data. So I think he's making it clear that if there are things missing from Jennifer McCabe's phone, it's not on me. You need to talk to Trooper Connor Keefe. So that was made clear this trial. He did create a report or something that isolated John O'Keefe's calls. He isolated between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe. He also isolated like Roberts and McCabe's communications. But he basically just came in and laid foundation and he is going to come back up. So then he comes back and when he is witness 9. So he comes back and they put in the reports, the calls and the texts for between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe from January 28, 2022 to January 29, 2022. They put in a thing that is texts and calls between John O'Keefe and Jed McCabe from January 29th, 2022. Karen Reed and Jed McCabe's calls from January 29th. Karen Reed and Carrie Roberts' calls. And texts with Ingrid and Bill Curtis, which we haven't really heard anything about them this trial. Um, he then reads the texts in that are between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed. I'm not going to go through those. I will link where you can watch that if you want to in the description box. But it shows that they were fighting earlier in the day. Around 2:30 there was fighting, and on the 28th John O'Keefe is rejecting Karen Reed's calls basically all day. John O'Keefe's there's texts between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed that of them arguing about a plumber coming to Karen Reed's house to fix her water. Um, they talk about, "Oh, I hope the plumber is hot," or something, or "Enjoy your alone time with the plumber." Karen Reed tells him he's not a scammer. It seems like John O'Keefe doesn't trust Karen Reed. It seems like Karen Reed doesn't trust John O'Keefe. Also seems like John O'Keefe worries about finances. He has a problem when Karen Reed buys expensive things for the kids, buys them like Duncan, is spending money on a plumber when he could fix it and they wouldn't have to spend money on that. Um, or Karen maybe doesn't worry about finances as much, but John O'Keefe doesn't want to spend money or waste money where he doesn't think you need to, which I can understand that. Some guys are like that, some girls are like that. Um, the communication, in my opinion, are crappy. Like, it reminds me of my teenage daughter and some relationships she's been in. That's what it reminds me of. It's petty little stuff. And it doesn't seem like a great relationship. There's mixed signals like, I'm going to ignore you all day. I'm mad at you. Karen Reed's feelings are hurt. She wants to figure out what's going on. He and then later she, she talks about going to the bar with him and then he wants her to stay for the weekend, but she was going to go back to her place and it's just a lot of like back and forth and then at the end of the night they seem lovey-dovey at the CF McCarthy's and the waterfall. So they have this spat during the day, but by night they're fine. Um, doesn't mean that they didn't fight later, but I mean, none of it's like seems murderous. Like it's just a crappy relationship. I don't know why either one of them stay in this relationship. Did John O'Keefe really think of Karen Reed as a babysitter more than a girlfriend? Was she convenient to have around because of the kids? And he wouldn't have to pay somebody or pay for daycare. Um, is Karen attached to the kids? Is that why she stays? Because she loves the kids. Maybe she doesn't like their dad or, doesn't like John that much, but she's attached to the kids and she knows that ending a relationship with John means she loses the bond with the children. People stay in relationships for different reasons. I don't know. Some people want to say, well, Karen had one foot out the door already, and so did John. But Karen would refuse for John to break up with her. Well, if she has one foot out the door, but she's also throwing a hissy fit because she doesn't want him to break up with her and wants her not to be in a relationship with her. So is she in or is she out? Is he in or is he out? Who knows? They were still together on January 29th, 2022, though. Whether we don't know where that relationship was going. There's a bunch of he said, she said, I know this, and on this day he said this, and but on a different day he was this way. Same with her. Like nobody knows. But there was nothing like there was no I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna smother you. I hope you die. There was none of that in these texts. It was not like graphic text or anything. I have seen some crazy texts, and this is just bad communication. There needs to be better communication. They probably could have used couples counseling. Um, but that was when Guarino was on the stand as witness number 9. Now he comes back for his final testimony for number 20. Once again, Hank Brennan is doing all the directs, and the defense did not cross him. They enter in John O'Keefe text between John O'Keefe and his niece from January 20th to January 29th. The last text Jen McCabe or last communication Jen McCabe ever had with Karen Reed was on January 29th, 2022 at 7:26:52 a.m. Jen asking Karen, "Can you send me Carrie's number?" Because Jen did not have Carrie Roberts' number. Um, then we have Karen Reed connects to the Wi-Fi at 12:36:39 a.m. We don't know where she was when she connected. I don't know if they have a location point for that time of where she was or how far she was from the house. It would also be an approximation for pinging and stuff like that. But Hank Brennan gets into the well, how much do Wi-Fi things go out? At what distance can you connect? And what kind of modem and all these things? We know that our internet providers tell us that you can get this high speed and it's gonna range the whole house. and you'll be able to connect and get internet access from this far away, when in actuality, our speeds are much lower. The distance and ways that we can connect to the internet are not as big as they say they are. Um, I have to basically be pulling in to my driveway. I am disconnected by the time I'm at the bottom of my driveway. Um, Granted, I have a longer than normal driveway, but so I can see somebody being in their driveway, um, or on this maybe on the side street right in front of their house. If I went to my neighbor's house, um, that there would not be I would not be able to connect to my internet. So the idea of her being driving down the road as she connected, I just don't see that as possible, especially if we take into consideration how Wi-Fi acts when there's bad weather. Remember, this was during the time where it was like the biggest storm in January's history ever for this area, or maybe even Massachusetts as a whole. So, how good is the Wi-Fi at this time? So 12:36:39 a.m. We know that Karen Reed's phone is connected to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi. And then we get into calls where from 12:33:35 a.m. is the start of Karen Reed calling John O'Keefe, and there not being any answers. John O'Keefe's phone is not answered at least from 12:33:35 a.m. on. And so from that 12:33:35 a.m. all the way until 6:03:02 a.m., Karen Reed makes 52 phone calls to John O'Keefe. That is a lot of phone calls, especially if you consider that Karen Reed was asleep for about 3 hours during this time period. So and it's only about 5.5 hours total. She's asleep for about 3 of them. So that gives us about 2.5 hours of her being awake, and in that 2.5 hours of being awake, she made 52 calls. Some say, "Oh, well, she's just creating an alibi, and she's acting like she doesn't know where he is." I think 52 is a lot. I think that's way more than somebody who is trying to create an alibi would do. I think somebody with an alibi would call maybe a maximum of 10, if that, and would also leave nice voicemails like, "Honey, where are you? Um, I'm just making sure you're okay. Staying at are you staying at the Albert's house, or are you coming home? I'm here with the kids. I just want to make sure you're okay. Just let me know." Like something like that. That is not the type of voicemails that Karen Reed left. So we have an angry, pissed off Karen and a frantic Karen who's hysterical and is calling 52 times within 5.5 hours. I don't, to me, this doesn't ring of somebody calling or setting up an alibi. It just doesn't. And and so we'll listen to the voicemails here in a minute. The second voicemail is an interesting one, and I want y'all to hear it and let me know what you think. But to me, the second voicemail that we go over is it sounds like somebody is disabling a house alarm, a security system in the house. And that voicemail takes place at 12:41:35 a.m. So this is several minutes after Karen has connected to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi. Karen, in a clip later in this trial, says that she knows there's a voicemail. She thinks from the voicemail that the beeping is from her car pulling into the garage at John O'Keefe's house. And I don't know if Karen has been told or because the beeping of her car should alert her of things when things are near or whatever. And if that's what she thinks, but let me know if you have a vehicle that would do this. Mine does not. I do not have a Lexus. I have a different SUV that is this is a 2021. I believe. Yeah, mine's a 2021. But if if I am pulling into somewhere, we can just say a parking spot, right? And you have a car in front of you and cars to your side, okay? Um it would not beep at me to alert me that I have stuff over here or I have stuff over there. Even if I come really, really close because like maybe the car next to me is parked over the line and has taken up part of my parking spot. It it mine hasn't beeped at me before. Maybe I don't get close enough. Maybe maybe her John O'Keefe's garage is like a really tight squeeze. Or if there's even something in front of the car. Now, maybe I've never scooted up close enough to the front of somebody's vehicle to have it beep. But if I compare that to when I'm like driving down the road, my car will beep at me if I turn my blinker on and I've alerted my car that I want to move over this direction. My car will beep that there's something over there that I can't get over right now. And it'll do that for either side, but my blinker needs to be turned on. It won't just warn me that something's near me. And it'll also warn me if I am signaling to my car, I'm going to reverse and there's something behind me. And it's like, "No, you can't back up right now. Something's near the car that is going to keep you from doing that safely." So I don't know if I think that it's her car beeping. I hope that makes sense to some of y'all. But Karen Reed is in a clip saying that it's her car beeping, she's getting out, she has her heels, you can hear her walking, you know, in the garage and going into the house. I don't know. I couldn't hear on the clip whether she said she, disabled an alarm or something in John O'Keefe's house, but then, you hear her walking into John O'Keefe's house with her heels. So, I wanna know what y'all hear because just because someone's saying it's this, she can be saying it's the car beeping, and maybe that's what she thinks it is, or that's how she remembers it, but maybe it's actually not. I don't even know if John O'Keefe has a security system or alarm system in his house, but maybe they set it before they went to the bars, and since that's her first time coming home that night from the bar, she would have to turn that off. I don't know, that hasn't been brought up. And then so that one is an interesting one. And then the other interesting one is the voicemail, the 8th voicemail that's from 6:03:02 AM, and it is of them, Jennifer, Carrie Roberts, and Karen Reed, all arriving to 34 Fairview, and you can hear where Karen Reed obviously left her phone in Carrie Roberts' car when she got out of it to go over when she saw John and got out of the car. Her phone stayed in the car. She apparently maybe was calling him when they were about to get to 34 Fairview or at 34 Fairview. She didn't hang up the phone before getting out of the car. And so, it rang and then eventually went to voicemail. You hear Jennifer McCabe on the phone with 911. You hear the windshield wipers on Carrie Roberts' vehicle. You hear Karen Reed screaming and that you can hear that she's hysterical and frantic. And then eventually the voicemail cuts off. So that's where we know when they arrived on scene is around that 6:03 arrival time is from this voicemail. And so let's bring up those voicemails and let's go through them as Guarino did. All right. So share screen. All righty. So we are going to look at the first one. I'm going to mute myself while this plays.
The defendant calls John, and voicemail number 1 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman, would you kindly play the voicemail for 123708?
At 12:30,
So that's the first voicemail. Then we go to the second voicemail. This is the one with the alarm that I want to look at. Okay.
41:35 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 2 is left. Some beeping noises, appears to be a butt dial or accidental call.
Ms. Gilman, could you play the voice message at 124135?
So there's number 2. That beeping, and then it sounds like you can hear her press in numbers on a keypad. That's what makes me think that it is not the car Lexus beeping when she's in the garage. But y'all let me know. Voicemail number 3. Let's go to it real quick. Mm. All right, here we go.
The defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:59:24 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 3 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
John, I'm here with your fucking kids. Nobody knows what the fuck you are, you fucking pervert.
So that is number 3. Those do not sound like, so far, somebody who's trying to create an alibi. Because she's just being ruthless. Most people, when they don't want people to think they killed somebody, are not going to be sending hateful things. All right, let's continue on with this fourth voicemail.
At 1 a.m. 26 seconds, the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 1 a.m. 49 seconds, the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 4 is left. It's 1 second called, no sound.
Ms. Gilman?
That was it.
That one wasn't really anything. All right, voicemail number 5.
At 1:10:17 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 5 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
Yeah, it's 1 in the morning. I'm with your fucking niece and nephew. You fucking pervert. You're a fucking pervert.
At 1:10:44 a.m., the defendant calls John.
So, once again, not nice. She's pissed. She's jealous. She thinks maybe he's cheating on her. Like, why is he not answering and why is he out late? Okay, let's go to voicemail 6. Here we go.
37 a.m., the defendant calls John. So when voicemail 6 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
John, I'm going home. I cannot babysit your niece. I need to go home. You are fucking using me right now. You're fucking another girl. Kim's sleeping next to me. You're a fucking loser. Fuck yourself.
At 1:18:38 a.m., the defendant.
Okay. So, also remember, she has been drinking. Okay. That's not in dispute. She's been drinking. She's drunk. She's not thinking clearly. He's not answering his phone. She's called him at this point, you know, over 20 times. But here's where we know that she goes to sleep and she's no longer calling him. We have the 29th call being at 1:18:38. And then we have the 30th call again at 4:38:14. So, she's been asleep during that time period. She didn't use her phone then. All right. Now let's go into this last. Oh, wait. Oh, we gotta go to 7. Okay. Okay. Let's go to voicemail 7 because she's awakened now. This seems like after she's called Jen McCabe. Let's hear what she says.
John, not answered. 5:23:26 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 7 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
John, I got you.
I did not understand that one. Sounds like it says, John, is that you? Which is interesting at 5:23. What would help us know maybe where she was is Karen Reed's location data, which is odd that Commonwealth doesn't bring any of that up. They talk about so many things where, oh, if she's saying, John, is that you? Did she see somebody? Was she at 34 Fairview? Was she somewhere else? Where was she at this time? What street was she on? Another thing they could use Karen's data on is when she's driving home that night from 34 Fairview back to John O'Keefe's home before she connects to the Wi-Fi, what route did she take? Also, what speed was her car going during that time period? I feel like either the Lexus or the phone in combination maybe with each other would give us answers to these things. But I haven't heard them brought up in the Commonwealth's case, um, which is interesting because those would be things that I would want to know. All right, let's go to this last one, voicemail 8, the one where she and them have arrived and found John O'Keefe on the lawn of 34 Fairview. That was timestamp 1649. Go here. All right. Last one of the voicemails.
Answered. 6:03:02 a.m. The defendant calls John, and voicemail number 8 is left with some voice and noise and background.
Ms. Gilman, could you play that, please?
Yes, I need someone to take 34th Fairview Road, Guarino Testifies. There's a man passed out in the snow. Yes. Yeah, I don't know why he did that. I can put that. Okay. I know. Where's my get? I don't know, P blanket carry. Yes, I need somebody. John is 46 years old. I don't know. He's out of the car and it could be an operator. Carrie? I don't I did. I know, I'm on the phone with Andrew. I know, honey, I know.
I have no further.
Okay. So that is the voicemails left on John O'Keefe's phone from Karen Reed. And you hear a lot of stuff in that last one. Just the wipers, even like with that, it just makes it more, the wipers make it more dramatic and you hear her frantic. Like it, the wipers make it sound like it's just a heartbeat going ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. Like it just does something. I don't know. That that voicemail is eerie, but you know something else that voicemail call is, and Nick Guarino used it on one of the calls and said it might have been a butt dial or something. I don't think any of these were butt dials. I don't. I think what happened is that Karen Reed was calling John O'Keefe when they found him, and she forgot to hang up the phone. She just went for it. And it went to voicemail, as it should if you call and nobody answers and you don't hang up your phone. And then there's another one when, when she's pulling up and she's arriving to John's house, that I think she was calling John O'Keefe. And then when she got there and she was going to turn off the alarm or go through the door or get out of the car or whatever, she didn't hang up the phone. So it just went to voicemail and collected all. I don't think she accidentally called him. She might have. Her phone might have been lit up. And when she's gathering things out of the car, she accidentally hits that button. She could have, but it goes to voicemail and the voicemail eventually hangs up on her. And then there's another one that might have been a butt dial, or what might have been a butt dial, might have been her calling and just didn't hang up right away. But what this does show us is that when somebody is accidentally calling or forgets to hang up or whatever, and if they were to make a butt dial, it would call the person. And if that person does not pick up, it's going to go to voicemail. And then the voicemail is going to record for as long as it does until the voicemail cuts you off and hangs up on you. What we do not have in Brian Higgins and Brian Albert is phone calls going to voicemail. We have calls showing up as answered. What we don't have with Jennifer McCabe is phone calls. We do not have any voicemails to John O'Keefe from Jennifer McCabe. Because if she accidentally called him all those times she called him, she didn't purposely call him those many times, there would be voicemails. Or when she says she doesn't remember calling her sister at a certain time, they were butt dials. Why do they show answered? Because what does not happen is when you get sent a voicemail, your phone does not register that as being answered. The person answering the phone and a voicemail do not log the same. So it shows us that Karen's phone works like a normal phone should. You call it, nobody answers, it goes to voicemail, and if you don't hang it up, the voicemail eventually cuts you off and ends the phone call. That's what normally happens. So I don't know why anybody else that was at 34 Fairview that night, um, after leaving the waterfall, I don't know why none of their phones work that way, but Karen Reed's phone works that way. So we learned that from that testimony as well. But that is going to be it as far as Trooper Nicholas Guarino goes. If he ends up coming back up to testify for some reason, I will make a video about that. But for now, they said that he's finished. So this should be the complete recap of his testimony. But I will see you guys next time for another witness. Bye.
I maybe be angry, jealous, or in love. Make sure outsiders don't ruin the reputation and reveal our secrets. They need to be stopped, or the truth will come out. Motive means opportunity. I have the knowledge, the skill, the support, the tools to become a killer. Motive means opportunity. Now the opportunity reveals itself by time and a shady alibi. I have no reason to explain the things that I do. Can I do the crime in the time? Can I cover this up, or does this mean we're corrupt? Motive means opportunity. Do I have the motive, the means, and the opportunity? Motive means opportunity. The motive, the means, and the opportunity. Motive means opportunity. I have the knowledge, the skill, the support, the tools to become a killer. Motive means opportunity. Now the opportunity reveals itself by time and a shady alibi. I have no reason to explain the things that I do. Can I do the crime in the time? Can I cover this up, or does this mean we're corrupt? Motive means opportunity. Do I have the motive, the means, and the opportunity? Motive means opportunity. Do I have the motive, the means, and the opportunity? Motive means opportunity.